Welcome to Rates and Barrels, live at the winter meetings in Orlando, day one. Derek Van Riper, Eno Saris, Orange Sherbert, Broccoli. Eno, how was your trip here?
Full of mistakes and missteps, and as you can see, the microphones didn't come with us, the headsets didn't come with us. I went to the wrong hotel last night in
Awesome.
the rain.
Good work.
Sopping wet. I was locked out of my computer, but we are here, and nothing is happening.
The universe was kind to us because if this had happened last year when Juan Soto signed that mega deal on Sunday night,
We would have been scrambling.
we would have been recording stuff on our iPhones and it would have looked and sounded ridiculous, but we got it all set up thanks to our producer Brian Smith for building our set here at the winter meetings. Come say hi if you happen to be in Orlando. The biggest news so far, Eno, the Contemporary Baseball Era Committee met on Sunday night and elected Jeff Kent to the Hall of Fame. 14 out of 16 votes, and it's interesting because Kent never received as much as 50% of the vote when he was on the BBWA ballot, but you voted for Jeff Kent. So I know there were some folks out there that had this reaction of, oh, Jeff Kent is the only one of the players on the contemporary ballot that got in, but you voted for him a few years ago. What do you think makes Jeff Kent's resume pop enough to be in Cooperstown?
Well, in my voting process, I start with a simple question: did he have 50 WAR or not? You know, I know that there are people that don't have 50 WAR that have good cases, but if you did, then I'm more likely to say you're in. But I'm not going to say you're just in. It's not like the Hall of War. I'm not saying that, but I'm just saying that's the first question you have to say yes to, right? There are some players where we'll get into later, David Wright, and some of these short sample, high peak players that I will maybe listen to your candidacy, but he checked the first box. Then I will go and sort of peruse the rest of your numbers, and the thing that stood out for me is that Jeff Kent did amazingly well offensively in parks that were not offensive ballparks. I mean, he was a Met and a Giant for most of his career, and in those ballparks, he still managed to put up the most home runs by a second baseman ever. Now, there's a little asterisk to that. Alfonso Soriano has more home runs, but he also had 1,000 games in the outfield, so he's a little bit of one of those split case guys. But in any case, you could say second most home runs ever for a guy that was in San Francisco and New York. I don't personally believe that lineup construction matters that much when you're talking about 9,537 plate appearances. People seem to think that he did nothing after he was a Giant, but he was 25% better than league average as a bat after he was a Giant as an Astro. So he's the guy that was, for his career, 25% better than league average as a bat. Now the big sort of elephant in the room is his defense, and I understand that's A, calculated in the WAR already, and B, of a time where I don't necessarily believe in the defensive metrics as wholeheartedly. So if you're going to give me a bat-first application in this application process, I'm going to give you a good listen, and I'm going to say that the defensive numbers are a little grayed out. And another way of saying it is, he ended up with 56 WAR, which is pretty good for a player just generally. Really good for a second baseman, and the error bars are somewhere 62 to 50.
Yeah.
And because you have to kind of say, I don't know exactly how bad of a defender Jeff Kent was, and he still played a pretty good position for offense. He wasn't like a first baseman who didn't have a glove or something. So I think it's the merits of the case. So I voted yes on Jeff Kent every year that he was on the ballot for me.
I think that's solid reasoning. I think where people get more frustrated with Kent being added to the Hall of Fame is when you don't have Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens and guys that put up just absurd stats, even with suspicions of PED use and all of those concerns like being part of their stories. you look at the difference in what those players all brought to the game within the same era, and there's still a pretty striking difference between them. I do think the point about Kent's defense not grading out particularly well is interesting also when you consider just how much defensive positioning has evolved in the time since, right? Just think about that. Like the modern game maybe would have been more kind to Jeff Kent, because if they didn't position him more effectively, they would have just played him somewhere else and he wouldn't have such bad defensive numbers. Now again, you can go through and retroactively tweak everybody and say, well, if they played in the modern game, this would be different, that'd be different. But I think the offensive resume is really solid. And I think the big thing too, this was in the write-up that Chad Jennings had after the news broke. So Kent gets in with 56 F4, a 45.6 JAWS score, Jay Jaffe's metric, and that might actually open the door for some other second basemen that would be right on the borderline. Players like Chase Utley, Lou Whitaker, Willie Randolph, Dustin Pedroia, right? So it's kind of interesting that if Kent breaks through and it maybe makes it a little easier or more likely for some of that group of four to get in, that might actually make a lot of people happy, even if they're not overjoyed with Kent getting in.
Well, if you're looking at the numbers on the screen right now, what you'll see, first of all, that is kind of maybe interesting, is that Jeff Kent had the best park-adjusted offense of any of the group. Does that hit weird? Do you believe that? Do you believe that once you account for parks, that Jeff Kent was a better offensive player than Chase Utley? I mean, I think it's worth questioning your priors on this and asking yourself if you believe that, because I can go back to me as a fan, and I definitely would never have thought that Chase Utley was an inferior offensive player to Jeff Kent. But I don't know. I'm also going back to a time when I was a fan and I didn't even park adjust in my head, or right. I didn't know about WRC Plus. So, I think it's another question where you're like, maybe Jeff Kent is a better offensive player than any of those players. I would probably rank Utley second offensively. Lou Whitaker right there with him. I think that WRC is at least directionally right here, where it tells you that Jeff Kent and Chase Utley are probably the best offensive players of this group. Lou Whitaker has an absolute case for me, and I think he should just be in.
Yeah, how is he not in? He's got the most complete resume of any of these guys.
Yeah, I mean, the best Fangraphs WAR by far. I could make the anti-Jeff Kent case for Willie Randolph, where I say this is a guy who was only 9% better than league average with the bat, and a lot of his 62 wins were built on defense. And there are other players where I've come to the have you got 50 WAR, and then I look at what their numbers are and have said I don't necessarily want to vote for you because it was defense first without an offensive offensive profile.
Yeah.
I know those players have a lot of value, but you really, to be a defensive first guy, I think you have to kind of be Andrew Jones, Ozzie Smith. You kind of have to be one of these guys that changed the position defensively for me to look aside from any shortcomings you might have had offensively. And Andrew Jones obviously had those in the end of his career, but he also hit a ton of home runs. So anyway, I'm talking about Andrew Jones here for some reason. What I'm talking about is that I don't know that I need Willie Randolph in the Hall of Fame. Lou Whitaker, yes. Chase Utley, yes. Dustin Pedroia is in the David Wright character. They are did you have 50 wins? No. But should I look at you more? Yes, because you were among the best players in your league, and you did have your career cut short by injury, which feels like something I should give you credit for, right? Like if you could have played, you would have played.
I think we're going to see something. This came up on our last episode with Jed Lowry. We're going to see something where the back of the baseball card and the Fangraphs and Baseball Reference stats change so much in the modern game that players like Pedroia and David Wright will be helped with the passage of time. Even if they don't get in early in their bids to be inducted in the Hall of Fame, after 10 or 15 years, I do think as we see more really good, shorter peak careers, there's going to be a greater appetite for recognizing players that have resumes like that. So time might actually be on the side of a player like Pedroia or like David Wright.
I also think that the Jeff Kent election represents something really interesting when it comes to personalities, how the media covers these players, and how those interact with their legacy. I mean, you could make the case that Jeff Kent and Barry Bonds were both equally unlikable to the media and in just in general. Obviously, Barry Bonds has another aspect to his, to his candidacy that's keeping him out of there. But with Jeff Kent, the other players were like, hey, there was no whiff of steroids, there was none of this, and just because he's unlikable is not a reason to keep him out. And I think this is something that honestly should actually help Carlos Delgado, maybe of all people, because Carlos Delgado has numbers that are up there with current Hall of Famers. And he also, I think rightfully so, because Carlos Delgado, he protested the bombings in Puerto Rico, and he took a knee, and he felt that he wasn't covered correctly, and he held that against the media for a long time, and that was read as sort of a surliness. And I think that what I'm sort of reading the tea leaves here with this group of players and this committee, they are more likely to say, hey, wait, the numbers are there. We're just not voting him because we didn't like him.
Right.
And I think Carlos Delgado will be helped by this. I'm not sure that somebody like Barry Bonds or Roger Clemens is necessarily going to be helped by this process so much, just because there are former players in that room. There are former executives in that room. And I think former players and former executives, in a large part, I don't want to sort of paint them all with the same brush, but I think a lot of them will say they cheated and I didn't, and so I cannot help vote for somebody who cheated.
I think that's the other part of this too. So the question about Bonds and Clemens that was bouncing around internally this morning was, will time soften the way people feel about the cloud of performance-enhancing drugs that surrounds those guys? My argument is no, because of how the committees are built that would ultimately elect them in. I don't think we're going to look 20 years into the future and have players on committees then that feel a whole lot differently than the ones that are part of those committees right now. And the other thing that's going to be working against both Bonds and Clemens is a new rule for the ERA committee. If a player receives less than 5 votes on the ballot, they're ineligible to be considered on the next one 3 years from now. So that means it's going to be 6 years, 2031, before Bonds and Clemens are even on a ballot like this again, and they were far away this year.
To me, that's the Hall putting their thumb on the process, and basically, this has happened before. So Barry Bonds was on the ballot, and usually you used to get 15 years on the ballot if you made that threshold on the regular ballot. And I think that they saw him sort of inching forward and inching closer and closer to the 75% level. There was a well-publicized letter from Joe Morgan to Hall of Fame votership saying, like, basically don't vote for the steroid guys, but I can't say this. The Hall can't say this, but I can say this, sort of thing. And given Joe's own history, I thought that was a little hypocritical, but they've changed that to 10 years. And I was never allowed to vote for Barry Bonds because of this. Now, why would I vote for Barry Bonds and also call him a cheater? I think the thing that's hard for me is that Bud Selig has a plaque. Bud Selig, who oversaw the process and oversaw this whole entire time and decided that they didn't need to have a steroid testing policy until he was pushed into a corner, is in the Hall of Fame and has a plaque. It feels a little hypocritical to say, oh, this guy should be in and these guys shouldn't.
Yeah, there's a world in which you can acknowledge the truth and get the best players we've ever seen into the Hall of Fame. That could happen. But
I also like your point about going to Cooperstown. We were talking about this before off camera, but if you go to Cooperstown, Barry Bonds is there. He just doesn't have a plaque.
Right.
There are balls and bats and mentions of his records, but not a plaque. And maybe that is the appropriate way to deal with this piece of history. It is an uncomfortable piece of history, even for me as a voter. I have to admit, I have a really hard time with Manny Ramirez, Alex Rodriguez, Andy Pettit, all of their candidacies on the current ballot. And it's because of all the things I'm saying to you right now.
Well, I didn't think we'd have a lot of Jeff Kent content on the pod today, but sometimes life throws you surprises.
Breaking news. The Rangers and Tyler Wade have agreed on a minor league deal.
That's what you got?
That's what
You broke out the soundbite for that?
You know what I really wanted to say? Josh Smith, draft and hold. Ooh, yeah, baby. First base eligible, third base eligible, shortstop eligible, and he's going to be the starting second baseman for the Texas Rangers this year. Go get Josh Smith.
We really resonate with a unique group of sickos.
Oh, yeah, enjoy that 270-10-10, baby.
All right, some other news from around the league. Since we last spoke anyway, the Rockies have hired a new GM. We wondered who would be working under Paul DePodesta in that role. It's Josh Byrnes, former Diamondbacks and Padres GM, most recently VP of Baseball Operations for the Dodgers. So this is a pretty smart hire because Byrnes has been in that chair before. He's worked in one of the most well-run organizations in baseball for the last decade, and we know the Rockies need to overhaul a lot. I think they at least have a person in place that can help them do that if, and this is a big if the resources are there for him to do it.
Oh man, this resource thing is just wild because I have a source that was telling me that the Rockies, up until 2 years ago, were making their minor leaguers pay for their own athletic tape.
Totally makes sense.
I mean, it puts the Moneyball A's to shame a little bit. I mean, athletic tape, soda, it actually makes sense for them maybe to pay for their own soda. You don't want them drinking soda, but you want them using athletic tape, but you want them being well supported and their ankles in good shape. I mean, it's ridiculous. And he's going to come from a Dodgers organization that, under Gabe Kapler and others, really ramped up their investment in the minor leagues. Like, they're famously, it's salmon. Salmon is the famous Dodgers thing. They serve salmon and chicken to all of their minor leaguers in order for them to have good nutrition. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, it just, to put that up against not paying for tape, I just think it's a ball in a bowling pin situation where it's like, is Josh Byrnes going to come in there and knock down the bowling pins and change the way things are thought of and convince ownership that no, we need to give them salmon? Or is he going to be browbeaten and leave this job in 3 years for AGM position somewhere else, and say, well, I couldn't get anywhere with ownership?
My contention was that this is a good choice for Josh Byrnes, in part because if it doesn't work, there's still going to be a future in baseball for him. If someone took this job for the first time and the Rockies continued to struggle to the degree to which they've struggled for most of their existence, there might not be a second opportunity, at least one at that same sort of GM level. And you've talked for a long time about people around the game looking at Colorado as an opportunity to do some things that are different. And I think we might actually see that. With that combination of Paul DePodesta and Josh Byrnes, I think if you're a Rockies fan, you can have just a little bit of hope that within the organization, there will be some change. Now, if it's A versus B, spend a bunch of money on the occasional free agent, sign the Chris Bryant deal, or spend on scouting, science, nutrition, the things that will make an entire organization collectively better.
Oh, I mean...
Yeah, you could spend that money wisely without boosting the MLB payroll a lot.
And in Colorado, it's specifically even more important because you basically have a whole class of free agents that won't sign with you.
Right.
You have to really overpay to get a pitcher to land with you as a free agent. So you really need to have great processes of developing pitchers and turning them out to have any, or have great trade processes. You basically need team control players that you can turn into major league players, either through development or trade. And I think also from the other side, you were talking about the role of experience in this. I think on the other side, you're talking about an owner who's been, dragging his feet about joining the sort of current ethos of baseball. And when it comes to tech and data and stuff, he's been dragging his feet. He hasn't really wanted to join. I don't think he's necessarily going to give the keys to the Maserati to a kid. It actually makes sense that it is these guys, that it's DePodesta from Moneyball 1, and it's and it's Josh Byrnes from the Dodgers. These are proven commodities that will, as you say, survive on their own, if it doesn't work out, and for ownership in Colorado, have some name value and some gravitas of their own.
Yeah, I think the development thing's really interesting, because if you had the ability to develop your own pitching, and the interesting thing with the Rockies, we've seen more hard-throwing relievers especially start to emerge in that bullpen. They had a few really intriguing names pop up over the course of the last year or so. So maybe there's a few things going in the right direction in that regard, but also league-wide, everyone throws harder. It's just easier to find those guys. I think the other side of this is if you can develop position players in excess and just be the team that trades for your pitching, that might work too, but you're going to need a plan for what you do with your pitching for those starts at home, whether it's creative usage, certain pitch mixes that work better than others at altitude. There's going to have to be something in place. We'll see if they're able to pull it off. Let's move on to the Nationals. New president of baseball operations, Paul Toboni, doing some work. Okay, so we saw a trade. Jose Ferrer, who ended up closing for the Nationals at the end of the season, goes to Seattle. Harry Ford goes back to the Nats. And I saw some interesting reactions from Mariners fans. They seemed a little underwhelmed by the return. Ferrer is under control for 4 seasons. He's legitimately good, high-leverage reliever. On a team with Andres Munoz, he's not a closer, so from a fantasy perspective, you're not chasing him for saves anymore. But he adds quality to a Seattle bullpen. Ford was just blocked with a capital B. And I think this ends up being maybe a win-win for both sides, where Harry Ford can get a clear runway for a lot more playing time in D.C. Keibert Ruiz has had concussion trouble and all sorts of health issues really over the last 2 years now, so they're probably ready to start moving on from him as the everyday catcher. Ford might be that guy, and they at least have some flexibility on their depth chart where if both of them are hitting, they can just play them both because of the way they're built.
And they have more of an opportunity for him to make an impact maybe in the outfield as well. They have other places where Harry Ford can end up, whereas an American League championship type team like an ALCS contender like the Mariners, it's a little bit harder to crack the lineup if you're not going to be a catcher, and they also have a pretty good catcher. The bar for entry is a little bit higher. So in terms of where Seattle was right now, Jose Ferrer makes a lot of sense for them. I think that he's a real high stuff lefty that can step in there, even if he's not their closer. They're building the super weapon. They're building the bullpen, that's going to win them everything. That's what they're hoping for. With Harry Ford, the negatives are you got a Fangraphs 40-55 on field. There is a question of if he's a catcher or not. The bat speed is not top end, so he may not have the top end outfield, the top end offense or power that some people might think when they see some 5s and 4s in the slugging percentage in the minor leagues. What he is a guy who really controls the zone. So, the Washington Nationals are just a team that can give him 300 at-bats as a catcher this year and see if he can be a catcher, see if what the power is. The power going to be on the upper end because he controls the zone so well, or is he going to be a guy that walks 10% of the time, strikes out 20% of the time, and has like league average power? That is someone that could be useful somewhere else, but probably should be a catcher. So I think that's what the flaws are, where people miss flaws sometimes, I think, when they're dreaming on a player. They think, oh my God, he walked like 18% of the time in AAA and, slugged 480. Why are we trading him from reliever? It's the question marks. It's the defense. It's the bat speed. There are some question marks here.
And I think it's easy to undervalue high-leverage relievers. I mean, when you consider Devin Williams gets 3 for 51, great closer, great track record. If a really good reliever is 10 to 15 million per year on the open market, and you get a guy for 3 or 4 years in this case, that's going to be less than that probably every single year through arbitration, you're saving some money and your team's getting a lot better. So again, I think this could be kind of a win-win, but it seems like
they're also a stuffist team, 110 stuff plus on Jose Ferrer. That was in there. Their stuff is very close to the public stuff. They like stuff.
And I think the thing that's interesting about Ferrer is we haven't seen a lot of swing and miss yet. Pretty low K rate for as hard as he throws, but he gets great movement on his sinker. He's got a changeup. We've seen a little bit of that slider now too. it's possible they change the mix a little bit or add something, and then maybe we do get some more swing and miss.
Only 8% usage on a slider that rates as a 128 stuff plus. I mean, that's an easy one where you're like, what if we ramped that up to 30%?
Yep.
You know, what would your K percentage look like on that now? So, yeah, I mean, in a vacuum, I guess I would say the Nationals win the deal because, you know, a potential catcher is, you know, with all these years of control, you know, Harry Ford also like runs well and like, you know, there's a lot of different ways he can help you. In a vacuum, it's a win for the Nationals. But what I'm saying is I understand this for the Mariners, I think.
Absolutely. So we're seeing Paul Toboni really kind of put his stamp on this roster, taking over in that president of baseball operations role. C.J. Abrams and MacKenzie Gore on the block. They're at least getting interest in both players. Gore, not that much of a surprise. I feel like he's been kind of bandied about in rumor stories and what I'm hearing pieces for the better part of the last 6 months, kind of going back to the trade deadline this year. Abrams, I think, is the newer name to this conversation. And I think it comes back to a broader question we've had about the Nationals, the struggles they have defensively really all over the field. And then you change up your organizational hierarchy, your coaches, you do a lot of different things over the course of a new regime taking over. It's going to take some time. With Abrams, I wonder if a team's interested in trading for him, does he continue playing shortstop somewhere else? Does he move to second base? Does he move to the outfield? And how much do you like the bat at this point, too? I mean, the Nats have some intriguing prospects. They took Eli Willits first overall in the draft last summer. Willits is the shortstop of the future. They don't have to do anything with Abrams. If they don't like the offers they're getting, they'll just play him at shortstop for another year and see what happens. But I'm kind of curious how you would view Abrams if you were a team that had some kind of need up the middle, because there are a handful of teams out there that are going to be looking for a shortstop.
Yeah, it's pretty difficult to say because you've given him a chance. He's a young player who's been put on notice before. I mean, it wouldn't be like the first time someone told him your defense is not good, dude. You know, like I'm sure he's heard that before, and he went from like really, really bad, like worst in the big leagues last year in 2024 to still pretty bad. And he had the whole casino thing where like he was put on notice as like, hey, you're not trying hard enough, and he was sent home. You know, so the wake-up call has happened, and it didn't wake up the numbers. The numbers are still sleeping. So if you get C.J. Abrams to be your starting shortstop, you have to be thinking on the level of 2 or 3 years. So, hey, that's good news. He's under team control for 2 or 3 years. Like, if you're a team that's losing their shortstop, like the Braves, would you maybe take a shot at it? Like,
I think it
Are you
depends.
that worried about him not being a shortstop at the end of the deal if you're not ever going to sign him?
It's year to year, and if you don't have a shortstop you like anyway, at least you're taking a chance on an exciting young bat.
Okay, how about this? C.J. Abrams using prospect capital for a guy who's projected to be about 7 to 10% better than league average and a really poor defender, or Ha-Seong Kim, who is so much older than him. Ha-Seong Kim is 30 years old and projected to be only league average with the bat, but a better defender. And you get him for just 1 year and $10 million.
I kind of like the idea of taking the chance on Abrams, because if it doesn't work out at short, it's probably going to work out somewhere else. Even if you're a below average or one of the worst shortstops in baseball, you could probably be decent at something else.
And could the trade itself be another wake-up call, just being like, oh man, a rebuilding team that had a young shortstop decided to trade me?
I think it's a pretty solid profile. Sub 20% K rates. Yeah, it's 6-7% better than league average the last 2 years, but right around 20 homers, 30-plus steals each of the last 3 seasons. So you're getting a very good young offensive player. He could still get better. Projections say he can do more of the same. I think there's at least a world where you can imagine a 115 or a 120, right? That seems possible. And the thing that I always think about with C.J. Abrams is actually the quick path he had through the minor leagues because of the combination of the lost COVID season and the injuries he had. He did not play a lot in the minor leagues, and he was drafted out of high school too. So there's, to me, still one more window for development for him where he can show us something we haven't seen before. I think there'll be enough teams excited in that where maybe the Nats actually can get a deal done. I would look at the likelihood of Gore getting moved as probably higher. I think there's enough teams that are looking for impact pitching. The big question we've run into many times with MacKenzie Gore is, what do we attribute the later season fades to, right? We always see this.
Whoa, wait a second, real quick. Is this right? 541 combined plate appearances in the minor leagues for CJ Abrams?
Yeah, he flew through the minor leagues because he lost 2020 and got hurt. He had a leg injury.
Oh, yeah, okay. I could see it. I'm a little pessimistic that the defense is going to get better. I don't know.
I don't know if it'll get a lot better at short, but could it be average at second?
Right. Yeah, but that doesn't help if you bought him for short. Yes, for MacKenzie Gore, you've got this year and next year. And, pitchers break all the time. And MacKenzie Gore himself has had a lot of second half fades that, doesn't, he has been healthy, but for the most part, but it's not somebody that you'd be like, you're necessarily betting. He never had like a 180 inning season, And I don't think you ask yourself, is he a guy we'd extend? And if he's not a guy you'd extend, then you ask yourself, are we going to be competitive in the next 2 years? And the projections and most of them say no. And I think the larger question for Toboni that is very interesting is that he took over during a rebuild. Ostensibly, he could take one of two paths. One is like, we are actually gathering some pieces here. We got wood, we got this, things are going to happen. Let me add to the pieces. But he wasn't brought in to be, a Dave Dombrowski, where he's like finding the final pieces. And the pieces are fitting together so flawed. Like we were talking about the defense. The Nationals can't necessarily move Abrams to second because then they have to move Luis Garcia to first, and where does James Wood play in this? So, there's a lot of missing pieces, like sort of island of misfit pieces stuff going on with the Nationals, where Toboni could just say, hey man, anybody's available. Make your best offer. I want to tear this kind of down and have my players in here. It's almost like with coaching and front office staff, like maybe he'll spend a year and evaluate Abrams and not trade him now, but ostensibly anybody could be on the level because he wants to lose with his guys. He wants to win or lose with his guys.
Right, and I would imagine the window for him is a 5-year window. This is a big hire. People around the game thought this was a sharp hire.
And he's
sense.
A young guy who's like first moves have all been in player development and scouting and like building the pipeline.
So the problem would be if you build it off of what's already there and don't modify the core to your liking, you're going to get 2 or 3 years in. Expectations are going to be higher after that amount of time.
Because you will just get a little bit better because all these prospects are getting better. They're going into their prime years.
But if by year 3 you're not a wild card team,
but you still have Abrams on the field and you still have Garcia on the field, and you're still trying to figure out where to play them.
Then the questions about whether or not you are the right long-term fit to be in charge, those start picking up, and then you can't necessarily rebuild it in years 4 and 5
unless you're AJ Preller for some reason.
Well, I mean, a lot of Americanos, and I don't know. I don't know how he does it.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been
really good Latin American presence.
I've just been moving nonstop for 24 hours, and all I've got to show for it is 45 minutes of this pod so far. It's taken an extraordinary effort just to get to this point today. But Abrams, Gore, both very interesting as trade pieces. I think I'm more on the side of I would be interested in trading for Abrams because at the very least you're getting above average bat somewhere at a position that matters. Maybe you also can turn him into a good defender somewhere as well. Former National Mike Soroka on the move. He goes to the D-backs, an Arizona rotation in desperate need of innings. We know the shortcoming with Mike Soroka, a really unfortunate track record of major injuries, right? I mean, 2 Achilles injuries, the shoulder post-trade to the Cubs last year. You don't know what you're going to get volume-wise. I like this as the high risk but low price sort of gamble that teams will take. It's a 1-year deal, $7.5 million, some incentives that could add another $2 million to it. From a stuff perspective and an arsenal perspective, what works for Soroka, and do you think there's a chance this actually can be a good fit? Could he end up being a 3rd or 4th starter in Arizona this year?
Soroka, I once got a text message from, it's been so long, I can probably out him by now. Brandon McCarthy was in camp with Mike Soroka, and he was just like, yo, check out this kid. And, that was back when he had a completely different arsenal. He had like a sinker and a changeup, and he was all about, command, and it looked so smooth, and he's an ice hockey player. I don't know, for some reason.
Canadian.
Yeah, for some reason that mattered,
But it's a certain toughness and athleticism, I think, that is generally kind of, you play hockey up to a certain age, yeah.
But then the career just went sideways, and he got hurt a bunch of times, and, come out the other side. What I'm saying is, some of that optimism remains with me. That, he's developing an arsenal that maybe he can command better than we can see, and maybe he can outperform his stuff a little bit. But I did want to investigate, because his slurve last year had insane numbers, had like a 200 slugging, but he has a 100 stuff plus on the curveball, which is slightly below average. So I said, well, why is this? So I did a search on Baseball Savant where I took all curves and slurves and I put it for his arm angle. So 32 to 34, he's at 33. And then I put it at his velocity, he's at 80, so I put 78 to 82. And it put the league average for all those curveballs, 745 of them, is his average. His slurve is exactly what you'd expect for a breaking ball out of that arm angle. There is no mystery to it. So maybe he commanded it really well.
I think that's the answer. I think it's command. I think command's always been a strength for Soroka.
That's why I wanted to say that it's not impossible that he outperforms it. His location plus on the curveball was 91. I don't know. I would assume that command has something to do with this. I'm just saying, I'm not going to eat up a lot of shares of this, even in later ones. I don't think the upside is huge, but I still understand it for the Diamondbacks because it's like an extra pitcher. Is he our 6th starter? Is he in the bullpen? Is he our 5th starter? We'll see, but for $7 million, that makes sense for them. I like it as a deal for them.
Yeah, that second half run in the bullpen in 2024 with the White Sox, that gives you a glimpse of what's possible in the other role if starting doesn't work out. Soroka's still just 28 years old, though, so I think it totally makes sense to push him a little more, see if you can get 130, 140 innings out of him, because it might be better than league average. I think that's at least possible. Is the ceiling high? I think you're right to say it's limited, but I think it could be good enough in deeper leagues, especially where we end up finding him on at least a few of my rosters. A couple tough matchups you got to watch out for, of course, being in the NL West.
Yeah, we don't even know who's coming out of that bullpen. We got 2 guys with arm repairs that, that can drag on.
Yeah.
So Soroka the closer, 5% possibility.
Yeah.
Maybe 10% possibility. Soroka setup man, another 10% possibility. Soroka the 5th starter, 50% possibility. So now you're at sort of 60, 70% usefulness territory.
Right, and then like a 10% chance that he's better than a 5, and then like a 20% chance that injuries are still a problem. And I'm not saying it to be rude.
I don't think that adds up to 100, but
we're close. Also, curves and slurves, one of the names we passed on for rates and barrels. We brainstormed about that 7 years ago, and that did not make the final cut. As you all know,
like a really last 5-round draft and hold situation. You're looking for guys where there are these percentages. Where does he have a 50% chance of being the 5th starter?
That's where that reliever success gives me that little glimmer of, hey,
he could be useful
they
otherwise.
Need him in the pen, and they will use him there, even though greater need, I think, is in the rotation. Some other rumors and rumblings. What a great place to just hear stuff going on. This one was in, I believe, Ken Rosenthal's notebook on Monday morning or Sunday night. Either way, the Pirates made a 4-year offer to Kyle Schwarber, likely worth more than $100 million, which would be probably close to the deal that Schwarber eventually gets somewhere.
I mean, the projected deals are around 5 and 30.
Right, but at least the AAV, $25 million per, is at least in the neighborhood. So if you're a Pirates fan, you're like, hey, we're out there.
And we don't actually know. I mean, that's a projection that comes from the outside. That's a projection that comes from crowdsourcing at Fangraphs. That's a projection that comes from people that aren't having to wrestle with giving a 33-year-old 5 years. And as much as we like Kyle Schwarber's plate approach and bat speed, and think that the bat will continue. And as a character, as like a leader in the clubhouse, I would give him a full stamp. He's been a guy who was into analytics and not. He's a guy who is working with feel. He's a guy who struggled. He came up, couldn't hit a high fastball for a while. He's a guy who struggled, and he's put it together. I would make him a hitting coach. I would make him a manager. Like I think Kyle Schwarber is a great addition to any team. He will help other players get better. And yet, 5 years to a 33-year-old, maybe he doesn't get there. Maybe the Pirates sign him because 4 years and 100, their second offer, they're 4 years and 110, or 4 years and 120 makes it happen.
I hope for the sake of my friends that are Reds fans, and I have a surprising number of friends that are Reds fans, that Schwarber doesn't sign with the Pirates on those terms because he's a hometown kid for Cincinnati. The Reds obviously need a bat. I love the fit for Cincinnati if they go that route. I'd love it if the Pirates did it too. But man, that would be heartbreak for Reds fans if they lose him to the Pirates of all places.
Why wouldn't the Phillies match this? I feel like
if that's what it is, they'd
window,
match it.
Right?
Yeah.
It seems like that fits their window, and
absolutely,
keeps them alive for 4 more years, and then they have to do a hard rebuild at the end of 4 and fire Dombrowski and find their rebuild DM.
Speaking of dingers, Pete Alonso meeting with the Red Sox and Orioles at the winter meetings. I did not expect to see the Orioles listed alongside Pete Alonso's name, given the previously discussed glut of bats on that depth chart, and trying to think about how Kobe Mayo and they tendered Ryan Mountcastle, like how all these pieces would fit together. If they were to go out and add Pete Alonso, that would force the issue of a trade being imminent, I think, even more.
Yeah, what would you do? I guess this is a warning sign for everybody that likes Kobe Mayo as a possible sleeper this year, because breaking news: Cooper Hummel signs with Japan.
Yeah, he left.
He got passed around by all these teams that wanted to sneak a third catcher onto the roster, like catcher, outfield,
super versatile.
Blake Sable
he switch hits too, right?
Obviously a giant. If he wasn't a giant, he was a giant in heart. Alonso, going to the Orioles would hurt Mayo, even if Alonso ends up at DH in the short run. I guess in the long run, you would say we slow walk Basayo until either Rutschman leaves or we trade Rutschman. We trade Rutschman, play Basayo, and then Mayo can come up. I mean, they haven't traded off of the starting lineup. They've tried to trade. They wouldn't even trade Mayo, I don't think. Would they trade Mayo?
And the right deal, I think they would. I don't think that's
Hopefully they don't run
goal.
out the clock till Kobe Mayo is 25 and then trade him to the Marlins, for 2 years of a pitcher. Listen, the Trevor Rogers thing, I guess it worked out. I guess I'm the idiot.
Mayo for Edward Cabrera?
Yeah, 2 years from now.
Another Orioles M's trade. Stop doing that, you guys. The Red Sox, I can see the fit there. I keep wondering if Tristan Cassis' name is going to pop up in a trade one of these days, too.
I have a really hard time valuing Tristan Cassis. I mean, I know we're walking the line between real and fantasy all the time, but in fantasy, I have a really hard time because he represents real upside to me at a position that is surprisingly hard to fill in draft and holds. And first base is one of those places where you don't have a guy who plays first base sometimes. A lot of it's more like, Romy Gonzalez was a guy like that last year, but that was an injury thing, You can run out of first baseman pretty quickly, first baseman you want to play specifically. And Cassis, if he's playing all the time, I want him.
Yeah.
I think he's a good bat. But they went and got Tristan Gray. They still have Masataka Yoshida. They don't, I feel nervous. And then I talk to, if you put a Pete Alonso on this roster, where does Tristan Cassis go? Minors?
No. I think you'd say Yoshida, you're just eating the money, and then you just play a lot of Cassis and Alonso. I guess the thing I'm worried about with Cassis, if he stays, is big side platoon risk. Still plenty of playing time, but that's sort of he's good, but that he's lacking compared to other top-end first basemen. I mean, the per-game numbers from Cassis when he's been healthy are very intriguing. But I would like it a lot if I knew he was in a place where, let's say, we're going to play you against lefties. You're an everyday guy for us. We want you to be in the middle third of our lineup every single day.
I kind of disbelieve these rumors. I kind of feel like we're being manipulated here.
Are we?
Into thinking that these two teams that have money would spend on a player that would create a need for them to make another move.
Right.
I don't think that teams normally are like, I want to sign a guy for a lot of money and then make a Yoshida trade.
You smell Boris all over this one?
Yeah. This sounds like mystery team, dude.
You know what we're going to do tomorrow? We're going to deconstruct some of this with our writers. Like we have a whole team of writers that are actually writing these reports.
Yeah.
We're going to figure out like where this is really coming from. We're going to sniff it out.
Yeah, does Jen really think that this is a real thing?
Exactly. We'll talk to Jen McCaffrey.
Yeah.
Like, okay, this Pete Alonso thing, is this real? And she'll get to the bottom of it for us. All right, Bryce Eldridge might be available. Where does this rank on your real or fake?
This one I get. And I get it because they traded for Rafael Devers, who can play first or play DH. And, they've traditionally had other guys. They've traditionally kind of run Wilmer Flores types through DH. So I don't think that they want to install a young player at DH. And I think that, Eldridge's defensive reputation is in tatters in the Bay Area. I mean, I think mostly in the Bay Area, people are like, I guess he's our DH. And it's very rare, I think, to install like a 25-year-old at DH and be like, here you go, you're a DH for us for 7 years. That's weird. So I think I would shop him to somebody that had a different approach to him. And also, if you're looking at the screen right now, you're seeing some of his comps when it comes to swing comps for Bryce Eldridge. And you take his around league average bat speed, and he's already like blah 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 blah.
What's going on in here?
But you take his average bat speed, which is around league average. I went a mile above and a mile below to capture a lot of guys. You take his tilt. He's got a scoopy swing. We know that. You look at Bryce Eldridge. He's got this like Cody Bellinger lifted swing.
He's 6'7". He's gonna have a scoopy swing.
Yeah, he's gonna have a scoopy swing. He lets the ball travel a little bit, but he also strikes out a lot. So you take this group of people, and there is no good comp that you want. The closest good comp that you want is Josh Lowe, and maybe that's good, but Josh Lowe, as a bat, without the defensive component and without the base running component, is actually not that enticing of a figure. And I say this as a person who just took Josh Lowe in my draft and hold and has been one of the number one Josh Lowe supporters. He is in our word cloud. But I'm saying that if that's the best outcome, and Jose Siri and Joey Loperfido and Zach Geloff and Brady House are on this list, I would trade this mofo.
That's your official stance. I would trade.
I'm just saying that you give me a cost-controlled center fielder. You give me a number 3, a starting pitcher. I got for 3-4 years. You give me. I mean, if you're stepping to the table with something interesting, I will trade you Bryce Eldridge.
The addition of Devers makes the fit tricky, and I think you're generally right to bring this up.
Oh, we got some refuting.
You can use that if you want.
Yeah.
Bryce Eldridge turned 21 years old in October, and you're like, you got the shovel out. You're just throwing dirt all over him, man. Give him some time. Like, there's still time for him to get stronger, even though he's a giant already. Literally and figuratively.
I mean, honestly, if he had like 3-4 ticks of bat speed, I might feel differently about him, because it is the scoopy, high bat speed slugger combo where I can look past some like swing and miss. But when you have the swing and miss and you don't have the bat speed, it leaves me a little bit cold. Alex Pavlovich tweets, asked about Bryce Eldridge at the winter meetings. Buster Posey said the Giants will always listen on anyone, but the plan right now is an Eldridge-Devers combo. I think he's got a chance to be one of the biggest impact bats in MLB for the next 10 to 15 years. I disagree, but,
I think the question...
I'm not selling him.
I mean, you see a 30, future 40 on the hit from Fangraphs. That's the concern, right?
Yeah.
How much swing and miss is there going to be? That's going to be the question. And if he hits the higher end of his outcomes, then Buster might be right.
Yeah.
And there's a world where you can have these guys coexist. I mean, Devers might be good enough at first base to be a regular first baseman.
And you can switch them around
just share the
bit.
spots.
Yeah,
just kind of get a feel for it, man. I can't take a guy like Eldridge and be like, well, he's been in the big leagues for all of 37 plate appearances, turns 21 in October.
It's fair.
Oh, we're done. Like,
it's fair.
Come
it's
on.
fair.
Give him a little bit of time. There are flaws. I will readily admit that.
I was really left cold with a 71.6 bat speed on a guy like this. Like I was waiting for it. I was waiting for the bat speed numbers.
Yeah.
When he got to the big leagues, because I was like, oh, this is going to be tasty, man. This is a big slugger. This is going to be Nick Kurtz level. And then when he came up like 4 miles an hour short of Nick Kurtz, I was like, whew, I think I'd rather have Nick Kurtz. Would I trade Nick Kurtz? No.
No. You would not trade that mofo.
Is that a hot take? No.
I would extend that mofo.
Yeah, right.
It's weird that you have the A's green and I have the Giants orange.
Yeah.
It's absolutely strange times here on Rates and Barrels.
What up, Bay Area?
How about this? The Royals are hoping to add multiple outfielders. Good plan. This according to Ken Rosenthal, 1 via trade and 1 via free agency. Free agency names per John Heyman include Harrison Bader and Austin Hayes. They are not, according to Ken Rosenthal, in on Kyle Tucker or Cody Bellinger. I feel like it's like the worst game of Guess Who ever, where like all the team logos are up there and you put a free agent on the screen, just flip the Royals down, flip the Rockies down.
I had to do this a two-parter because it's too obvious, but where did the Royals outfield rank in WAR, and what was it for last year?
29th and 0.3.
You gave them too much credit.
Oh.
30th with minus 1.4 WAR from the outfield, a 70 WRC plus. Fire the lot of them. No, I like Jack Caglianone. I would be fine with penciling him in. I think there's a lot of upside there. I would just let him run with it. And I think we should let John Rave in center. I think that there's it's going to be hard for them to find a center fielder in free agency. So I think it is the left field situation right now where it's like Rave, Lofton, Blanco, Tolbert. That's a morass. In literary terms, that is a morass. And so they need to get out of the morass on that one. No, not M-O-R-E.
That's what it sounded like you said.
No. Well, okay. It is that too. It's a whole lot of but in any case, we were trying to brainstorm ones. I was looking specifically at center field. And I like maybe a Jake Myers trade.
Jake Myers seems realistic.
You could combine that with a Mike Ostremski.
Yeah.
And then it would be officially adding multiple outfielders, and you could definitely climb out of 30th.
I was trying to think if you paired one of Bader or Hayes, probably ideally Bader, because then you have center field solved defensively, and even if Bader's sort of average-ish with the stick, you can live with that. That's better than what you had, and you're getting great defense that'll continue to make your pitching staff an asset. Where do you go via trade? How exciting can you be? Because it sounds like Chris Bubich, in the final year of club control, is the player they'd be most likely to trade. So who could they line up with?
It's only 1 year of Bubich, and like your surplus value on a guy like that. Plus, Bubich is not going to tick some boxes for some teams. Some teams are more stuffist, some teams are more commandist. Like Bubich is going to be a little bit more on the command side.
They should have got Taylor Ward before the Orioles did.
That would have
been to the Angels for 1 year of Taylor Ward. Kind of close, right?
That makes some sense.
Something
although
like
the
that.
Angels may have, if both deals are on the table, they probably would have taken
You take the chance on
more years.
Grayson Rodriguez because the time and the ceiling is just higher. I like Bubich enough, but
the thing that's hard about what they're trying to do in trading for an outfielder is like, it's not like the trade deadline where you have like clear rebuilders that are like, oh yeah, take this piece, Right now, even among the rebuilders, you want to have some optimism, right? Like, I would say the only teams that would do a rebuilding trade in December right now are like the White Sox and the Nationals. That's why we're like breathlessly reporting these. But I think even the Rockies are going to be like, we're building, maybe. They said they would listen. They would talk to short-term outfielders as one of the news items for the Rockies. they're going to try and improve their team. But I would okay. Let's put the Rockies on the rebuild list. Maybe you can get Brenton Doyle, like we've said a million times. Maybe you can do that because they did just hire two guys. You'd probably give them 3 to 5 years. So they may want to do a little rebuild situation in Colorado. But Tovar, that'd be interesting. Tovar, would you rather have Tovar or Abrams?
Tovar.
Yeah.
Tovar's a great defender. Even though there are more questions about his bat and his approach than there are with Abrams, I'd love to have a great defensive shortstop. It's not like a slam dunk. You've also got a pretty good team-friendly extension that he signed, too. So for the life of that extension, I think you at least have an average shortstop at the end and probably a well above average shortstop at the beginning.
My point is the Pirates are rebuilding at the deadline. The Pirates aren't rebuilding now. You hear all the rumblings. Kyle Schwarber, we're spending money. You don't go to the Pirates now and ask for Brian Reynolds. You had a better chance of getting Brian Reynolds in August.
I think I have this for you. I think I've solved the puzzle. How about the A's? Can the A's make a trade with the Royals? Because Tyler Soderstrom has to play in the outfield, with Nick Kurtz being the first baseman. Denzel Clark is a phenomenal defensive center fielder. So Lawrence Butler's in right. And Colby Thomas looks like an extra guy now.
He might be Quade,
is there
not.
just enough there where you could justify maybe trading one of, I know you extended Lawrence Butler already.
But I think
trade one of Soderstrom or Butler?
Ooh, not for Bubic, but...
Not for Bubic, but can you...
If it was a bigger deal.
Could you be a team that says, yeah, actually, we're interested in your other pitching, and we have controllable outfielders that we're willing to move?
It's not really the A's style. They normally hang out onto the bat pieces that they have and try to add the arms to it. But I think the current A's realize that they're not going to get any free agents deals in the marketplace, really. The Severino was an obvious overpay from the moment.
And he hated it the day after he signed it.
And he's not helping them in the marketplace. No other agent is no other agent or pitcher is Luis Severino really loves it in Oakland. Maybe I'll give him a try.
Let's get to
They
Sacramento.
don't have a reputation for having good pitching coaching. They have a terrible home park. Nobody wants to pitch there. They're saying the mound sucks, so you don't even want to use the mound. Trade is a way for them to improve their starting rotation.
Yeah, I think it's going to be something a little bit more off the wall if the Royals find more of an impact sort of outfielder.
Yeah, because none of the stuff we're talking about is really impact. Jake Myers, Austin Hayes.
You're filling the need. You're addressing
the
multiples.
Off the floor.
Right, and then you're going to be still probably bottom 5 in the league in terms of what you get from that group.
Unless Jack goes nuts.
Yeah, that could happen. There's reasons to believe, as you've outlined on the show before. Any other massive news stories hitting in the last few minutes? Did anybody else go sign with a team in NPB or the KBO or anything?
No, I think it's time for dinner.
It is time for dinner. So on that note, we are going to go. Thanks again to our producer, Brian Smith, for putting this episode together. Good news, we're back with you here on Tuesday from Orlando.
And hopefully more things will happen. Thanks for listening.